No.
Okay, and welcome back. This is Henry Weston's Old Mate, the podcast. It's been a while since me and Stu have been in a room together again. It's been a couple of weeks. We're joined this week by Peter McCormick from the US of A, Vermont. We've just had a little bit of a geography lesson because I was all over the place, but you're very welcome, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. Thrilled to be here.
Excellent. It's great to have you. How are you, Stu, this week? How are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm just sorry. I'm laughing a little bit because my American geography, whenever we watch quiz shows at home, my wife, there's a running joke that she spent a year living in America. She likes to remind people her American geography is very strong. Mine is particularly weak, but off air, you made me seem intelligent. So that was very kind of you.
That used to be the staple of our night shifts when I used to work on intensive care, is when there were downtime, when you were really struggling and had to find ways to keep yourself awake, naming the whole, all 50 states of America would be like the bingo challenge to fill an hour just to try and, you know, it was like that episode of Friends where you just kind of, you've written kind of, I don't know, Ohio 6 times and you think you've got 50 states down, but you've actually the same one 6 times. Anyway,
I've got a quick anecdote for you.
Go ahead.
I was in a car rental place in the Milwaukee airport in Wisconsin. And I showed my driver's license, and the woman, who was mid-20s, I was going to say, looked at that, looked up at me, and she said, "Is Vermont in the United States?"
Well, even I know it's quite close to Canada.
I thought to myself, boy, our educational system and or our hiring system has really failed here.
Amazing.
Wow.
Good. That makes me feel better for thinking that Vermont was near Colorado. So anyway.
Not even close.
Yeah, not even close. Anyway, right. So let's do the usual intros. So Stu, you're still sober and still not tempted, which is that's an assumption.
Yeah, sober, not tempted. Mental health. Actually, it's a good mental health is a good one because it's towards the end of the week after the long Easter weekend, which we all know in greenkeeping, or for me where I work, is you don't get a day off. So it's a bit of a test how I've been looking after myself. This sort of Thursday, Friday period would potentially be a bit gruesome, but I'm doing pretty well. Getting to bed early, that's been my key. This week I've been in bed before 9 o'clock every day. Not really by choice, but I know, having worked the 4 days of the long weekend, not all day, but we've managed it. So we're going into this weekend not too bad at all.
Excellent. Every hour before 10 o'clock counts as double.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's not nonsense either. There's some science behind that. That's very good. And you're still training for your. It's not a half marathon. It's not even a marathon. It's more than a marathon, isn't it? Coming up.
No, it's just over half a marathon. It's a 16 miler. So it will be my longest. It will be my longest run, actually. I think I've done 14 miles before. Yeah, I'm still training. I should get a training schedule set up. Whether I do or not, who knows? Currently, I'm averaging about 24 miles a week across 3 to 4 runs. I haven't been brave enough to step on the scales yet, but my clothes tell me I think I'm going in the right direction. It'd be good to shift half a stone so I don't have to carry that. I've been saying that for 10 years, though. But that's going well, and everything else seems to be going well also.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so let's get into the subject area today that we're here for. So I'd come up with this idea for this podcast, which just taking some of the heavy lifting away from Stuart, who normally comes up with all the ideas for the podcast. And I've been thinking a little bit around. We've touched on it a few times around making work kind of a happy place. So we touched on it with Dan, and I particularly liked his kind of analogy around work-life balance being a complete nonsense, because you've got this idea in your head around kind of scales and they should be equal, and that doesn't really exist because you spend most of your time in work. And also when we spoke with my brother Chris on the pod, there was a whole discussion around I guess, not spreading yourself too thinly and being present and just kind of all of that sort of stuff, but and having purpose in your work, like why you come to work and why you do what you do. And I thought there was so much more within it that we could discuss, because I think there is, on a day-to-day level, like the purpose is important, but on a day-to-day basis, you need to go into work and find some fulfillment. Otherwise, what is the point? It's where you spend most of your time. So that was kind of the background to what I wanted us to discuss, really, is kind of making work a happy place to be, going in there, not feeling like you're dreading it, and having some fulfillment around it. That's where I was, really. So Stu, Peter, I hope you've been reading your business books. Because
I've been to work today, if that helps. Well, I feel reasonably fulfilled.
Okay, good. So I guess where I wanted to start then is about, and it came off the back, really, Stu, of when you had talked about it, about making work, having purpose for work.
Yeah.
And when we discussed it with Chris, there was something that you said about, going to work. You go to work because you want to provide for your family.
Yeah.
You bring home a wage, and that's, societally, that's part of your role. Breadwinner, caveman style, bringing home the bacon, all of that sort of business. But for me, I think on that, and that is great in terms of having that purpose. But I think if you are doing a job that you don't enjoy, or you're working with people that make your life difficult, staying in that job purely for the purpose of providing the money for the family has the potential to really skew that relationship, even make you resentful of your family because you're doing something that you don't really like or enjoy.
Yes, 100%.
So I wanted to get into the day-to-day, what it is that you can do that will really kind of justify the means and, make it worthwhile. So thoughts on that first of all, and then let's kind of go into it. Peter, let's start with you, because you talked off air a little bit about having some experience in this area. So what are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, I've never worked for a large company. I've always worked for relatively small. The largest one I think I worked for was about 60 employees. That was a machinery dealership for the turf business. I also worked for a smaller one, competitive brand. That one was arguably the worst employer I ever worked for. Just a horrible person. I was in a sales management role, and I had never been a sales manager before. And, when I got the job, it was like, okay, how did I just get this job? And it didn't take me very long to realize that I got it because nobody else wanted it.
Right.
I mean, I had some background in that industry, but nothing specific to that. I looked at that experience as being sort of like going in the military, where, okay, this is going to be a good experience. I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to meet as many people as I can. I'm going to stay on good terms with my competitors, and I'm going to get the hell out as soon as I can. And that took me about 2.5 years to jump to a competitive, larger organization that was just a world apart. That was my model for what I call a high performance environment, where I just almost literally jump out of bed in the morning to go to work. And that starts at the top and trickles down.
So 2.5 years in a job, like 2.5 years is a long time not to be happy. So
it sucked.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it.
So how are you getting out of bed every day? You just described jumping out of bed in a new job, but what was getting you out of bed? Is it literally the packet, or did you find a way to kind of give it all meaning and
Well, I had 2 young kids at the time, which helps, and a mortgage and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that was the motivator that sort of held my feet to the fire. And so I just didn't smack this guy in the head and leave. But interesting story along those same lines. I had been there about 3 weeks at the time, and something happened. It was something just ridiculously stupid. And he calls me up into his office up in the ivory tower. He was up on a level above everybody else. And he just ripped me a new one. I mean, shredded me about something that was just absolutely ridiculous. And I didn't know what to do. So I took it. I said, okay, turned around, went down to my office, took about 15 minutes to gain some composure, marched right back up there. And I said, okay, if this is going to be the way our relationship is going to be, I'm done here. Okay. I wouldn't talk to you that way. I don't expect you to speak to me that way, blah, blah, blah. And he never did it again. But he delighted in chewing people out and just browbeating them, and just a horrible person. So how did I, I mean, socially he was fine, but as a boss, he was a prick.
Yeah.
How did I deal with that? I didn't have much choice, but I had that end game in mind that I was learning as much as I could, and I was going to look for the exit whenever I could.
How often, what was your dealings with, how frequent were your dealings with that person? And did you have a group of people below you where that was perhaps the team that you felt more affiliated with than the boss?
Yeah, well, I was a sales manager, so I had 3 salesmen who were out on the road.
Yeah.
So I would just keep in touch. I would see them physically once a week. When we would gather to go up and sit in front of the boss, and he would take our paychecks and throw them across the desk to us like he was doing us a favor, But then I forget whether this was before or after he chewed us all out for the week. But I dealt with him every day.
Right.
And there was nobody between me and him. I did have some other people who I was responsible for, but they were not in the office.
Okay, fair enough. And Stu, from your point of view, I guess your thoughts on kind of work and making it meaningful in the industry that you work in. And so I'm going to say something deliberately provocative, stroke naive. And that you can build in it, and it's not meant to be offensive or insulting.
Yeah, can't wait for this.
Here we go. It's the big build-up, right? But working in turf, your job is to grow, then cut grass, and make a golf course look presentable, lovely, all that sort of shizzle.
Yeah.
For a lot of people on the outside, that might sound like pretty mundane, not very scintillating work.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by, not meaning to be offensive or anything like that. But, through you and this podcast, I've met some really interesting people with some really great outlooks on life who bloody love their job.
Yeah.
So what is it? What's happening?
I don't sit in the position to answer that the same way that.
Well, I think you do, because you're not necessarily at the top of the tree.
Yeah.
By your own admission, but you've been doing this work for 20 years. So
yeah.
Why?
If you ask me what motivates me and what motivates majority of greenkeepers, you'd probably get a slightly different answer, because my heart and soul are not in growing grass, but I actually do enjoy a lot of the processes involved within greenkeeping. I don't come home and write down fertilizer programs for my back garden. A lot of greenkeepers do. You know, I take pleasure, as I think 95% of people in the industry, I take pleasure, huge amount of pleasure from presenting as best a golf course as we can. You know, the fine turf surfaces, your greens, your fairways, and your tees, to get them as presentable, looking nice and playing nice. You know, anyone who understands golf will, you know, a green can, or a golf course can look nice and play absolutely shite. We aim to sort of accommodate both as best we can, but motivating for me. Am I motivated to produce the best golf course to keep the golfers happy? No, I'm not. My boss, yes, probably more than me, and that's professional pride, I would assume. And then there's a certain amount of, well, job security, really, isn't there? That is his role. Our role below him is to support him as best we can, be the best sort of day-to-day operators, if you will. So I don't know if I've answered your question 100% there, Phil, but
well, I think maybe I could chime in there, Phil, if I could. For those obviously don't know me, I work in the golf course business as well, but not as a practitioner like Stu is. But I've talked to a lot of people, particularly about this work-life balance and trying to find joy in, you know, your workday. I think the one thing about working on a golf course is that there's instant or near instant gratification. There's daily gratification. At the end of the day, as you're driving out the drive, you can turn around and look at what you helped prepare. I think that there are also other things like, you know, working in the fresh air and the sunshine. And of course, you guys over there could say we're working in the rain and the fog and the
how dare you, Peter? Like it's kind of like it's
where
nothing.
Phil lives. They work in the rain. Where I live, it's just cold and windy.
But even intangibles like the smell of fresh cut grass and things like that, you know, those are the little things that tend to add up. I think that add value to working in that business.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I've picked up on really is the there appears to be a camaraderie within the team. That often when you've got a group of people that have come together for the same purpose, and it might well be that an instant gratification or a paycheck or whatever it is, but having that same group that come in every day, there is banter, there is fun, there is, you know, there will always be, whether it's office politics or kind of tee box politics, whatever you want to call it, there will always be that. But having those people together, it sounds like it can be a lot of fun if you get the right group and you can kind of thrive off each other. Is that?
Yeah, you're not wrong, and that's, I think, what the 2-3 sentences you've just put together there, Phil, probably go for every workplace in the world. Successful ones, sports teams, you know, successful ones. Dare we get into political parties, successful ones, not currently over this side of the pond. We won't start Peter on his side of the pond either.
Don't start on that, please.
But yeah, to be successful, if you have a boss, manager, head of department who can then get everyone below him pulling in the same direction and hopefully the correct direction, then you are surely on to a winning formula.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think for just pulling on my experience so I working in healthcare, it seems, well, on the face of it, it would seem that there is very clear reasons and purpose to the work. Like, you know, I've worked in intensive care for 10 years, and I've worked in organ donation for 14 years, something like that. And there are very clear reasons why I come to work, because I do know every single day the work that I do goes towards saving lives.
Yeah.
There are impacts that I institute that mean that I do save lives, the work that I do. But that's almost in that kind of higher echelon purpose of providing money for the family and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Day to day, I still need sometimes that kind of kick up the arse and that camaraderie with colleagues, and that face-to-face contact, and that joy that you get, or that excitement, that buzz of creating something new and exciting. That means this is going to actually impact more people later on down the line. And I think sometimes in healthcare, particularly in the NHS, we do fall complacent with, we all know that we're doing a good job, and aren't we smashing people? And, we've all lived through COVID and all the rest of it. But the number of people that have worked through COVID who fucking hate their job right now because it's been relentless and it's tiring, and actually society is tired of it. And, the world is walking around at the moment as if COVID doesn't exist, but the hospitals are still stacked.
Yeah.
There needs to be kind of that lower level purpose rather than, wow, you're saving lives, because it just doesn't wash in the same way.
Well, I think we can sort of dip into some work that Peter's been doing recently with regards to the labour crisis within sort of turf over in stateside over there. And I know it's the same in the UK. What you have just sort of mentioned and touched on, Phil, I think a lot of people are struggling to find a purpose to keep them in the turf industry globally now. I don't know, year after year, people aren't, they don't see their lives, their finances and their professional lives are getting worse year after year, and they're choosing to leave the industry. That might be the same in other industries, but you think professionally, if you want to develop yourself professionally, if you spend a year of your life working your arse off to produce a fantastic golf club, and then the next year your budget is slashed, your seasonal staff numbers are slashed, you're provided with waterproofs and steel toe cap boots of a lesser quality, yet your resume or your CV is enhanced through training that you've done yourself. There's nowadays people are wising up, and they're putting 24 months down the line. They're thinking, this isn't working. I think I'm talking turf specific here. I'm only able to sort of comment on that, but I know from listening to Peter and his work, and some work I've done and some chats I've done sort of just in Twitter DMs and stuff, why people are leaving the industry, our industry, is because they that long-term goals or the sense of achievement is being dashed. It's not materializing, and they are getting out. They're finding other ways or other professions that give them that gratification on a heartfelt manner, potentially, but also in a financial, their bank balances are improving, which, whether we like it or not, is a huge motivating factor in life.
Those insights, what you're seeing, Peter? Is that chime true?
Yeah, one of the things that jumped out at me from one of Stu's comments was the word team. And when you look at the daily, what makes a day pleasurable, what makes you jump out of bed to go to work, that kind of thing. If you've been on a sports team, and this would be from school all the way up through the pros, and if you ask them what their favorite part of their job is, or of playing the sport is one thing, but the most fun is in the locker room. It's in the dressing room where all the bullshit goes on, where the ball busting goes on, where the camaraderie is fostered. And if you bring that to the workplace, I think one of the most important times of the day, or maybe the 15 minutes before you start. That's when people are getting their cup of coffee or cup of tea or whatever it is, and they're sitting around shooting the breeze or shooting the bull or whatever they shoot. And you know, you talk about sports scores from last night or what everybody's doing, and it's that kind of thing. That and the lunchroom, obviously, as well, coffee breaks, that kind of thing. But that's really where the camaraderie, I think, begins and is fostered, and is so critical to a high performance, enjoyable workplace. I think.
Do you think? Well, I would suggest that COVID has knocked that for six. Then, Peter, I know I'm a miserable sod, and I quite like the shorter, the shorter or the smaller groups that we've been taking breaks at work. We've now gone back to a full team in the room, and I'll be honest, no, I don't think anyone from work listens to this, but I don't have a problem with anyone who I work with, but I preferred sitting with 6 of them in a room rather than 16. But there are many, many people who prefer the larger group for the exact reasons Peter's just mentioned. And our mechanic, Gary, actually, he made a comment to me recently that he really missed that 15 minutes pre-work that Peter has just touched on. I personally don't miss it, but Gary commented that used to really set him up for the day. So that's quite interesting that sort of Peter mentioned that, and then put 2 and 2 together, you know, with COVID and sort of restricting people. So that may have had quite an impact across, you know, mess rooms and workplaces.
It's interesting, isn't it, that for a long time before COVID, you just had one side of it. There was always like, you get all 20 people into the room, you have your pre-start of the day cup of coffee and kind of ribbing of kind of Man United have lost a football match again.
Yeah, we don't talk about sports results anymore in our mess room.
Too many fist fights, huh?
No, my team doesn't win anymore, Peter. They won everything for 20 years.
But now we've seen the other side of that, where if you strip that down, there are some people who were perhaps normally quiet in that environment, who are coming out of their shell because they've got space to breathe, and feel a little bit more comfortable in a group of 6 than a group of 20.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see new personalities come out of that. And I think that there is certainly an opportunity of, let's not just go back to how it was, where we throw everybody back into the room again. There's an opportunity to look at both sides of that and say, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we'll have everybody in, but Tuesday, Thursday is kind of COVID style, 6 people in a room only, and have that space.
And this is,
go on.
No, that is what I'm not going to talk too much about, Bill, because we've touched on it before. And it's such a wonderful point that we don't have to go back to what we did simply because that's what we did. If we have found success and happiness and pleasure in something slightly different. I'm not necessarily, you know, we're not suggesting that we stick to what's new just because a few people like it, but there is wiggle room.
Well, I think it's about accommodating everybody, well, not everybody, because you can't necessarily do that, but by accommodating and being as inclusive as possible. What we've just discussed and what you've articulated is that the 20 people in a room option was good for some people, and the 6 people in a room was good for some people. So, but there isn't a halfway house in that. You know, making it 10 or 12 in your room doesn't make it right. It will just be right for some people.
Yeah.
But having that variety and being as inclusive as possible means that, you know, Gary will look forward to on Monday after the weekend football or rugby fixture, or whatever it is that he's into sport-wise. He will look forward to coming in and ripping into people on a Monday morning. But Stu will look forward to getting up on a Tuesday morning because actually he knows it's only 6. He'll get to speak with Bob or whatever it is. And, you know, it will be a good time.
Good old Bob.
Good old Bob. Yeah. So, no, that's it. That is really interesting. I think, COVID has shown us, it has been just fucking awful for the vast majority, but it has opened eyes a little bit in terms of there is a different way. And we shouldn't just, like you say.
Oh, I was talking to Stu prior to you coming on and just mentioned that I have long wondered about when we would realize that this concept of getting up in the morning and, you know, showering, getting dressed in reasonably nice office clothes, grabbing the piece of toast as it comes out of the toaster, getting in your car and driving for however long, sitting in traffic, whatever it happens to be, spending time just to go to an office where you could do the exact same thing that you could do at home. Now remotely, and obviously COVID has accelerated that, the realization that that can be done. I think that, you know, on many levels, COVID is forever changed the workplace. I know my older daughter and her husband live in Boston, and
geography test.
Geography test. I know where that is. On the East Coast. But she worked in public relations and he works in educational sales, and both of their companies eliminated their bricks and mortar office. They just don't have a workplace anymore, which I think is okay. On one hand, working remotely is not for everybody because it does take some personal discipline that not everybody has. They both like it. They enjoy the flexibility, but they probably work more because they're not spending time commuting and, you know, all of that kind of thing. Yeah. And then I just probably lost my train of thought. So I will, I'll double back.
No. I think you're absolutely right. I think the best of both worlds is this hybrid version. I mean, what you've just described is kind of what I was experiencing, is that I would frequently travel 4 hours for a 6-hour meeting. But that's 8 hours of travel in a day. So I'm doing pretty much a day's work in travel for a 6-hour meeting where I'm not performing because I'm bloody tired.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the day and all the rest of it. And actually, you're absolutely right. I do get more work done based at home. However, it can be isolating. So having that hybrid option of occasionally dropping in at meetings in person is really important, because you know, sometimes you get your energy from being around people.
Yeah, the thing that concerns me about that also, look, you know, as both, or from a management standpoint, or however you want to look at it, is how do you, to use the current in vogue term, onboard? How do you onboard new people, particularly young? How do they get the culture of the organization working from home?
Yeah, my God.
I mean, Zoom meetings are okay, but
yeah, how do you get that teamship feel? How do you get that culture?
Yeah, exactly.
My wife's brother has been working from home for the whole of COVID, and he has since been asked to return to the office a few times a week, up to 3, but a minimum of 1, I think. He doesn't like it, for one, for the financial implication, because he's got used to not spending the money. But the argument, it's money he used to spend before COVID. But what his company haven't quite got right yet is he travels in for one day, but if he doesn't travel in for the same day that other people on his team travel in for, he then sits in a cubicle and does exactly what he would be doing in the converted garden shed at home. So that's an example where his company are moving back towards what pre-COVID in a sense, but they have yet to they haven't quite put the pieces together. You know, the next step would be, yes, you have to come to it. We expect you in the office 1 day a week, but we can't guarantee that anyone of any relevance to you in that work day will be there. So really it's left him still thinking, well, I'm now £35 down from my travel costs, and I haven't seen anyone of any relevance to me, of any importance. So that's just an example. I won't name the multi-million-pound corporation.
Always have a Zoom meeting while he's sitting in his cubicle, right?
yeah, exactly.
It's got to be joined up, hasn't it? You've got to, if you're going to come in, you've got to come in to be with the people that are going to make a difference, to kind of progress the work that you're working on, which
it has purpose. It goes back to that word purpose, Phil, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But it's also segues nicely into kind of some of the notes that we've discussed around kind of progress in the work. I've been on a lot of courses through work, and a lot of the stuff goes in one ear and out the other because it's kind of samey old shit that you've heard but recycled in under a different name.
Acronyms.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's been a few courses and a few people who really stick in your mind, and you think, well, you've either articulated the old shit really well that it's stuck with me, or you've come up with something that's made my eyes open a little bit more. And progress is one of those things. And there's an interesting book called The Progress Principle that was advised that I read, which I did. And the core principle around it was people are happiest in their work when they can see progress in what they're doing, however small that might be. Now, you might be working on a 10-year project, and if you go in day to day, you know, a 10-year project is going to be a slow-moving ship. But if you know that you've made progress every single day, you're happy. That's fine. Yeah. And, you know, that resonates in any profession, I would say, whether it's what I do in nursing and in healthcare, or whether that's turf, or whether you're in a factory, or whether you're sales, or whatever it is. If you can say at the end of the day, I've actually made progress, and therefore there's been a point to me being there.
And that progress can be on a few levels, Phil, I assume.
Yeah. So what are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking, just an example I've got in my head is something as simple as building a bunker at work. So in the winter, you might rebuild a bunker. We sort of revet them down on the links of blocks of turf, one on top of the other. It's a bit like building a brick wall in a sense. So you will leave at the end of the day with, let's just pull a number out, 8 new rows of turf, and you finish the next day and you will have 16 new rows of turf. That is progress in a physical sense of what you're seeing in front of you. There are other tasks within my industry that you won't necessarily leave the day you might have been out divoting the tees. You won't have a sense of achievement from that as you would from building a bunker, but you may have spent time with a colleague who you haven't seen for a while, so you may then go home, but you have made progress on within yourself.
You make progress on a relationship.
Yeah, a relationship. So there are. Yeah, I'm just thinking that it could, if you go home, you may go home and think, oh, I haven't really progressed today. But I think if you looked deeper into that, you probably have on some level.
Yes. So I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't always have to be physical, something that you can see.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And I think sometimes progress might just be you've made somebody else's day. You know,
that's very important.
Yeah. And I think when you make somebody else's day, it doesn't, you know, you get that warm, glowing feeling inside and blah, 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 blah. But what have you actually had out of it? But you will get something out of it in the long run, because reciprocity is important and people like to return those favors. I think that's having progress in your day or in your week. It might not even be day to day, but week by week is an important factor with the work that people do in terms of satisfaction. How does that work with you, Peter? Do you see that? Or?
No doubt. I mean, as you guys were just speaking, there was a ton of different things going through my mind. One of which was the fact that 2 months ago, I didn't even know you guys. You know, that kind of thing.
We're sorry.
Yeah. You know, Stu and I both have had our struggles, me with depression more so than alcohol. But as I say, with alcohol, I had a quantity problem, not necessarily a frequency problem. But and I have stopped drinking, and there's a I don't know whether it's sort of radar that you have out there that you tend to identify people on social media or in whatever circles that you travel who might be struggling, or you know that kind of thing. And I know Stu and I have both communicated with several people who, again, we didn't know, but yet you reach out and you extended a hand, if you will. If they take it, they do. If they don't, they don't. But most times they do. And that's gratifying. It's gratifying in a lot of ways. It hopefully helps them feel better, helps, and that comes back to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've commented on this a few times, that particularly the social media community for kind of addicts and mental health, in certain areas of mental health, is really, really supportive, like unconditionally supportive, which is a real positive of social media, because I do often say it is a cesspit of kind of,
no doubt,
the worst of
you've got to have very finely segmented groups within social media. If you let the outsiders, the incomers in there, the trolls, whatever, they can ruin it in a heartbeat. But you know, the turf community, turf Twitter as we call it, is the same way. There's a lot of mutual support.
Yeah,
and you know, that's obviously a benefit to social media, but boy, it sure has its downsides if you let it.
Yeah. So it kind of, again, moves us on very nicely. This is all completely unscripted, but we've got some notes, which is quite nice. But it kind of...
You're doing well, Phil.
I know. This is bullshit 101. Kind of feeds into a little bit around choosing how you approach these things. And like we spoke off air, and some of our notes talked about, I want to talk a little bit about the Seattle fish market, because there is a philosophy out there, a management philosophy.
I'm hoping that's on the coast somewhere, Seattle.
West side.
The other coast.
That's it, yeah. Northwest, it's where Twilight was set.
It's where the Northwestern of Deadliest Catch sails out of, I know that much.
Anyway, so there is this leadership philosophy that comes out of the Seattle fish market, which is called fish philosophy. And again, on the face of it, working in a fish market might not be the most glamorous work ever, but, and you know, where you go on holiday, the way I liken this is that, like, Seattle fish market has got this reputation that people want to go. It's like you go to...
There's a theatrical side to it, isn't there?
Yes, there is a theatrical side to it completely. So if you go to Seattle, you're going to go to like that big tower that looks like is it the Space Needle?
Space Needle, yeah.
Right, you might go on the grunge tour, the Nirvana tour, go and watch Pearl Jam, blah, blah, blah. Go over to, go and do all that. And then you're going to go to the fish market because it attracts people there. And it's not because of the fish. It's not like going down, like if you've been to Barcelona and you go down Las Ramblas, you fall into the fish market there. Yeah,
and a few other places.
And a few other places, but we won't go there either.
No, we won't.
But you know, it's not the fish that you're going for, it's the people. And the people that make that environment, the people that are selling the fish, are there for they're, like you say, it is a performance that they're putting on. But I think the important thing that I wanted to hone in on is they choose their attitude. They're there from 4 o'clock in the morning. They are there all day long for the tourists and for the people buying fish and all the rest of it. And they're slinging, catfish at each other and whatever it is that they're doing. But there is an important distinction about kind of choosing a mindset and choosing to be happy in the moment rather than just like, oh, I'm here selling fish again.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, that kind of stands out in that some days are really, really hard. And I've had my own mental health struggles, and depression is, just, a dark black pit for me sometimes. But that doesn't mean that you can't be happy within that or choose your moments to choose your attitude. And I think that was just, it really stands out for me that in making your workplace a good place to be and being fun, that there are times when you can choose that attitude of, I'm going to engage here, I'm going to be present, and I'm going to have fun, because the opposite to that is just fucking moaning and being miserable.
And I think, that's such a good point, Phil. And it's something that over the years that I have been guilty of, and has been pointed out to me by more than one boss that I have worked for, that of the character that I sometimes am, and certainly used to be during the drinking days. Not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily drink related, but maybe I just had a different approach to life when I was drinking. But I have always been a reasonably prominent sort of member of a tea room, of a lunch break. I have always been liked to be heard and quite free in sharing my opinion. And that, the point I'm trying to make is that when I chose to, and I did choose to quite a lot of the time, be miserable, grumpy, or disruptive, that ended up setting the tone for anyone else who happened to be in that room. And I didn't realize it for a lot of years. At points when I did realize it, I then played on it and chose to use it as a weapon in a way. Not very proud of that, but when you get told that you are capable of ruining people's day, let's say, by your approach to a room, and then on more than one occasion, if you're of that mindset, you then choose to do that if you can. The point is that somewhere like the fish market, that's an environment where they all choose to pull in the same direction. But I think, what needs to, or what should be said, is that when you're at the top of the tree, it is vital that you set that tone correctly, daily, hourly if you have to.
Yeah, no, I think I do agree. I think there is a little caveat that I would put in there. So we used to have a chief executive in the NHS organisation that I work for, who would often start his presentations and his speeches by saying that the leader sets the weather,
right,
for the rest of his team or her team, which I think is absolutely spot on. If you've got a leader that comes in with a sour face, you know that you're in for a shit day, and everybody else is on
yeah, we're having it today.
But leader doesn't mean pay grade. Leader is a person of influence. So if you, like you, Stu, if you've been in your position for however long, you are somebody who is respected and holds influence, and influence is probably as powerful as pay grade.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
And you come in being a shitbag on that day, you set the weather.
Yeah,
and I think it just kind of backs up what you've said. But let's not just narrow it down to the people at the top of the tree, because there are.
Yeah, and what I should probably suggest is, and you are 100% right there, Phil. And what I did just say, probably I didn't think it quite through. There is obviously, we do have to remember that the people at the top of the tree can't be happy. We all have our struggles, so it's very easy for me to just say, if you're at the top of the tree, make sure you're doing your job. I was then forgetting that they might be having a bad day also. So
exactly.
As best they can.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to chuckle at you, Stu, but your comment about somebody realizing that they're capable of ruining somebody else's day.
Yeah,
that was.
No, it was. I think. Yeah. It's. I'm always as honest as I can be. Once I realised that was actually, I don't whether I was capable of doing it or whether the people in the room weren't capable or strong enough to either stand up to me and put me in my place. But yeah, it isn't. I'm not particularly proud to admit that on occasion it became a weapon of, that I could almost choose if I wasn't having a good day. I knew I could potentially adjust that day by making other people's less.
So nobody else was going to have a good day either, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's that's not a wonderful thing, is it? But that's how it, was at one point.
I think there are people that I was almost going to say we've all been there, but I don't think that that's fair for everybody that's listening. But I think you can appreciate that if you're having a shit day, watching other people having fun is no fun either.
Yeah.
So I think you can understand, I think, how that manifests and then comes out in a tea room or in a meeting or whatever. It's like, why are you guys having so much fun when I'm just kind of dying inside?
Yeah. That's. I mean, I've noticed it a lot more probably in recovery since I've been trying to do more work on myself. I now sit back and not necessarily in a work environment, maybe in a social environment, maybe if it's on something as sort of simple as public transport. I don't use public transport too much, but I remember me and my daughter took a train to Canterbury at some point in the last year, and there was somebody being particularly rude to the conductor on the train, and it set that whole passenger carriage, it set the tone for the whole carriage. And I'd look back and you just think, wow, that one person had such an influence on, say, 15 other people they'd never ever met, but got me thinking.
It's that kind of toxic display.
Yeah.
Like I say, it sets the weather. It sets the weather, isn't it?
One of the other things that I just wanted to touch on briefly that was a very impactful thing for me. I mentioned a little bit about the worst employer that I ever worked for, but I'll flip that to discuss the best one I ever worked for.
Do you work for yourself, Pete? Do you work for yourself, Peter?
I have been self-employed. Functionally self-employed.
You worked for.
He should be putting his hat on.
I've been functionally self-employed for the last 28 years. But in any case, he had a knack for doing little things. There was one time, again, working in an office, I had to prepare a municipal bid that was just a lot of paperwork, a lot of nonsense, but it was due in like 3 hours. So I had to work through my lunch break and knock on the door. He walks in and puts a brown bag on my desk, and in it was a ham and cheese sandwich on rye bread with a can of Coca-Cola. And I thought, what did that cost him? $5? But this was 35 years ago, and I still remember that sandwich. Other things like Stu on the golf course. I don't know how hot you guys get over there, but
16 degrees at best.
Yeah, well, there are times where it gets pretty friggin' hot, obviously in places here. And I knew a superintendent at one point where he would have an understanding with the kitchen in the clubhouse that he would go in the afternoon and he would get a box of ice pops.
Yeah.
And he would get in his cart and he would drive around and give all the guys out there strimming or whatever, raking bunkers, whatever they're doing, he would give them an ice pop. Not every day, but once in a while, enough to be a pleasant surprise. Again, this is what did it cost the club? 50 cents, maybe, something like that. But it makes people feel good. It makes people feel that they're valued, that at least somebody cares about them. And little things like that, to me, again, cost nothing. It's just a matter of somebody deciding to do it, and then to do it.
Yeah. So there's part of my work and part of the work that a lot of the teams that I work with do is working with families immediately after they've been told that they're going to be bereaved, that the loved one is dying, and we talk about organ donation. But part of what we talk about in our training is when you're addressing these families in kind of the worst scenarios of their lives, really, where they're about to lose a loved one, we talk about it, the families never, ever, ever remember what you say to them, but they always remember how you make them feel, which is exactly what you've just described, Peter, in terms of, the guy riding around the handing out popsicles, or the chap that's giving you your sandwich while you're working through your lunch break. I can't remember what he said to you, but actually the gesture and the thing that you have felt in that time 20, 30 years later has stuck with you. And I think that is an important thing to remember, that influence that we all can have on other people with the simplest of gestures sticks with people for a long, long time, because you've made them feel invaluable on that day.
Yeah.
It could be something as mundane as a smile also.
Completely.
Which is becoming increasingly difficult and increasingly rare these days, I'm afraid.
I think sadly, within the turf industry, I think pats on the back, congratulations and well done's are becoming unfashionable. That, people might think, might want to throw darts in the comments at me for that, but it's the truth is that, be it from the people within the people, the people they work for, or the membership, or the visit. I think visitors and guests potentially still offer that, but memberships and bosses, club managers, I think it's another reason why people, might be leaving the industry. And a lot of people might, the argument might be, we don't have time. The argument is we don't have time for all that sort of stuff. But as Peter has just mentioned, something that he remembers 35 years on. If I'm honest, I can't remember the last time anyone popped their head in our mess room at work and said the course is looking fantastic. Our boss passes on emails occasionally, and it passes on feedback, but it's becoming rare.
Yeah. So the biggest asset is your people, isn't it? More so than the machinery that you maintain or anything like that. So being able to, using a mechanical, and I'm not a mechanic, using a mechanical term, being able to service your staff, with in the right way, and feeding into kind of how you motivate them is actually probably as important, if not more important, than servicing your lawnmowers and your other things that do.
Yeah, we need that sort of metaphorical oil change and filter change, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Or at least I do.
Okay, so I've just looked at the time and surprised myself that we haven't even got halfway through some of our notes, which is just fucking par for the course for us, isn't it? If you use the golfing pun. So we've hit our deadline and more, but Stu and I talked offline that there's probably some quite a lot more that we can discuss in this area, and we probably will with either you, Peter, or you're welcome to join us on the next one as well if we bring a few other people in who have got experiences outside of turf. But any final thoughts from you both?
I'll let Peter start.
Well, it's a topic that, you know, you could spend weeks and weeks discussing. The very fact that somebody is hopefully introspective enough to look at their own organization and see what kind of positive impact they can be. Maybe they can have, maybe it's as simple as Stu deciding that he's not going to be obnoxious today. You know,
yeah.
he's going to bring in a good vibe to the lunchroom, whatever it is, as you know, as an employer or a boss, whatever it is, you know, setting the weather. I think I've not heard that term before, but that's awesome. And it's very true. You know, we've all heard that, you know, the saying that, you know, business is like a septic tank, that the shit floats from the top down, or I'm assuming you've heard that, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
that's how Phil describes Twitter quite often.
But we can all impact that, you know, within our own sphere, and bring a little bit of a lighter attitude, I think, maybe toward what we do. Yeah. Collectively, that would help.
Yeah, I agree. There's a TV program on a Friday night in the UK, Peter, called The Last Leg, and they have a catchphrase really that kind of sums up what you've just said. Is it's really easy, just don't be a dick.
Yeah,
that's pretty much. Is Stu going to be obnoxious today? Just kind of think, am I being a dick?
Yeah.
There you go.
For me, Phil, value. That's what there is time to make everyone feel valued every day. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take long. If we're talking about a professional environment, you know, you like Peter talked about turf greenkeepers leaving, sort of driving away from the golf course and seeing the work they've done, you know, the stripes on the fairways or whatever it may be. I think all of us can take responsibility in making somebody else feel valued for their time spent at work. And that, I'm not necessarily talking about the person at the top of the tree. In my position at work, I am, you know, it could be me, someone in the middle of the pack. I could, if I chose to, I could choose to make my boss feel a bit more valued with some kind words, or I could choose to make the apprentice feel valued, and hopefully but mean it as well. I'm not talking about bullshit, you know, pat on the back, good job, well done. If you say it, mean it. But there is room to make everyone feel valued, and I think everyone deserves to feel valued, but daily almost. There is time for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the one thing that I would add to what you've just said, Stu, is that having been someone that's been at the top of a little tree, people below me, so to speak, the number of compliments or pats on the back that you get from the people below you as the person at the top that says, good job, Phil, as the leader, the manager, whatever, are so few and far between. It's an isolating place to be sometimes. So yes, it's important to, you know, make people feel valued. Don't forget the people above you. Managing which is important. And, you know, if your boss has been good that day, tell them.
Yeah. Even if they are going to be a twat tomorrow.
Well, but if you tell them today that they've been good, they might be less of a twat tomorrow.
No, you are 100% right. You know, I guess that's something we learn in life, isn't it? You know, I'm past that awful age of 40 now, and wherever we sit in that social or professional ladder. We should all be old enough, grown up enough, wise enough to, like you say, if someone above you has done a good job, you might not think it's your place to tell them, but it doesn't do any harm, I don't think.
Very few people are telling them. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, that's your point. And I can't remember the last time I told my boss that he'd done a good job. Perhaps that's something I need to start doing more.
Well, there was an interesting, I can't remember where I saw it or read it or whatever, but catching people doing it right, just finding any opportunity that kind of says, when somebody's done a good job, doesn't matter how good, how little, just catch them doing it right and mentioning it. Even if your boss has said your name right, whatever it is, just say.
As opposed to the opposite, where we're quick to pounce when somebody's doing something
we are
wrong.
Quick to pounce when it's just like, oh my God, you're 2 seconds late today, whatever it is. Yeah.
You were only 4 minutes late today, Phil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let me fill you in on a little McCormickism. Okay, you ready for this?
Ready.
Now, I've been married. I'll be married 45 years this year.
You were like 15 when you got married. What are the laws in?
No, I'm 67 years old.
Oh, looking good, Peter.
Well, it's all a matter of the mind. But in any case, I do a lot of presentations and stuff like that, and I do some that are, I have some greenkeeping turf type content, but then I have general life lessons and things like that. So I throw this one out there. I said, okay, and this piggybacks on something that we just talked about. I'm going to give you the 3 steps to a happy marriage. Number 1, choose your battles. If something's more important to the other person than it is to you, let them have it. And that's going to come back to you at some point. Okay. Number 2, give them space to grow as a person. And they will in turn hopefully give you space to do the same. Number 3, don't be an asshole. Don't be a dick. It's the same thing. It's very simple, but not something that we always think about. Be nice.
Yeah.
It's free.
It is free.
Absolutely. Cool. So 10 minutes after we started the wrap up, I think we need to take control and
I've got to go and put a shopping list together.
As you go and do the wrap up. So all right, Stu, I'm going to hand over to you for the like, rate, review, coffee sales stuff.
Yeah, we should have mentioned it earlier. Yeah, just if you're watching this video, like the YouTube video, please subscribe to the channel, share it about. The same goes with the podcast. Please follow the show. Henry Weston's old mate. Scroll down below the list of episodes. You can drop us a 5-star review if you like. And of course, we have the coffee set up. If you go on to www.buymeacoffee.com, you can make a small donation to the future of the podcast. That's about that from me.
Perfect. Well, let's finish off then. Stu, I think I've enjoyed this episode, not because it was my idea, but I think it's generated so much discussion, and I think we can roll on with quite a bit with it.
Yeah.
I've actually been really, really pleased to meet you, Peter. We've had a bit of interaction on Twitter and stuff like that, but it's been a real pleasure for me to kind of catch up with you.
Me as well.
Yeah.
I'll just put this on while the video's still rolling.
Yeah, so I was wearing my hat earlier on while I was gardening with my 11-year-old, so it's been put to good use. So, no, real pleasure. Thank you to everybody who's either watched or listened. I hope you've enjoyed, and we will catch you on the next one. But until next time, keep safe and don't be a dick.